Hi guys, and welcome back to the world of 28mm. I'm Adam, and in this week's episode we're going to be taking a look at some MDF kits and how to work with them. But before we do, as I said in a previous video, I have got a new mic. Now I've used it in this video for the content itself. I was going to film the intro and outro at a different angle with the microphone in front of me, but it took up so much of my face that you could really only see from the nose up, and I don't know, it just didn't look right to me. So opinions from you guys, leave them in the comments below. Would you prefer the intro and outro to have better sound, but visually it's gonna cover up my face, or are you quite happy with this intro and outro? So leave it in the comments below so I know, how to present it for you guys. Anyway, so that's the sound. Let's head down to the table and we'll crack on.
Okay, so let's take a look at some of the glues that we can use for MDF kits. Now I'll start off with the Decorators Pva. I almost called it a Directors Pva. Decorators Pva. Basically, I wouldn't use this for an MDF kit. A lot of the decorator stuff is watered down, and it will take ages to get any bond if you can get a bond at all. And it's just not worth the time and hassle. It will take weeks for you to finish a project with this sort of stuff, so veer away from that. If you're going to use PVA, I would use regular PVA, should we call it, the proper thick gloopy stuff. Now this is the Citadel, but you can get the proper PVA from plenty of places on eBay or craft shops. But this is nice thick stuff. You will require clamps with this, just to let it dry for a couple of hours, but you'll get a good firm bond probably in about half an hour, and then it will dry. Well, usually PVA takes roughly 12 to 24 hours to properly dry, so it will take a little while, but it's a good way to go and it's cheap. Okay, so after that, I quite like using this. This is the Gorilla Wood Glue. I believe it's got like a polyurethane mixed into it or something, because when it dries, it doesn't dry clear like PVA. It dries with like a yellow tinge. So this stuff is brilliant because after about sort of 2 to 5 minutes, you've got a good bond between your two pieces of MDF. You will require clamps like regular PVA because it will take an hour or two to properly dry. But this is brilliant stuff for MDF kits. Make sure you wipe out any excess, because like I say, when it dries yellow. So you don't want any of that poking out the front. But you will need clamps. It will take a little while longer to build, but you will get a nice firm bond. You can hold it there 30 seconds to a minute, and you've got a bond. Leave it for a couple of hours and it's dry. Okay, so this stuff is really, really good. So next up, feels like I've sponsored a bit like Gorilla Glue here, but these in my opinion are the best ones to go with. So next up we'll look at the other Gorilla Glue. Now this is a polyurethane based glue. Once again, you will need clamps like the other Gorilla Glue stuff. The thing to watch out for with this is it expands when it dries. So you're going to need clamps, and you're probably going to need some very heavy weights as well to stop things from moving. It will cause things to shift. But if you use this, I guarantee you it will not break, providing that you use this properly. Give it a good shake and dampen the areas and everything, and follow the instructions on the back. But this provides a really, really good bond between MDF. It doesn't take long to actually stick, so you can hold it for a couple of seconds, let go, and it will be fine. But you will need weights, and you will need clamps. But great stuff. And then lastly, we're going to go on to the Superglue. Now this is a good plan. Say your MDF kit arrives in the morning and you've got a game in the evening and you'd like to use it. Superglue, gel superglue specifically, is the way to go. You put this down on the MDF, stick it down. It will take a few seconds to actually hold it there, and then it will be dry within a few minutes. So this is really good if you're in a rush and you want to like use it, play with the MDF kit the same day. Okay, so that's it for the glues. So next up, we'll take a look at the paints. Alright, so I'll clear this away and I'll see you in a sec. So next up, we're going to take a look at the paints that we can use for our MDF. Now before we start painting, we need to, basically MDF is a very porous material, and if you just go in ahead and spray it with a spray paint, it will just soak into the actual MDF and you'll end up having to do 3 or 4 different layers. So we combat this by using either a varnish or a bit of watered down PVA. Basically give it, if you're using the varnish, then just give it a good coat over the MDF, and that will seal up all the pores in the wood. And the same goes with the watered down PVA. Just give it a quick coat, let it dry, and that will settle into all the pores, and basically you won't have to spray it 4 or 5 times. Okay, so that's a good way of sealing your MDF before painting. Now we've got several options to paint with. We can go straight forward with a spray paint or a primer or whichever. This is a Rust-Oleum. I've also got an Army painter there, but you can use spray paints to paint it as a whole. Makes it a lot quicker. You can also, another option would be to use a wood stain or a varnish. Now the bonus with this is I found I did it with a couple of my Test of Honor Japanese buildings, and essentially a good tip with the wood stain is that don't seal the parts with PVA or varnish before you put this on, because essentially what will happen is the MDF will soak up the moisture from this and you'll end up just dry brushing it on. Now if you're careful, you won't go into any of the details and things like that. So that's a really good sort of little tip and technique for using varnish or wood stain on your MDF kits, is don't seal the parts that you want to use this on, and it will soak up all the moisture and you'll almost dry brush the colour on. So we've covered, let's see, we've got the sealing, painting, staining, and then finally we've then just got your normal acrylic paints from whatever company you use. These are both Vallejo. And these are ideal just for little touch-ups, or if you want to add weathering or anything like that to the build. And then finally, we've got washes. Now these are good, same as the models, for increasing depth into the piece. So if you've got a nice roof bit and you've done it, say this colour, this is like a terracotta colour. If you put some black wash over it, or a dark brown wash, maybe a burnt umber, it will bring out the detail of the MDF quite nicely. So washes can be really handy. I wouldn't advise using the Citadel ones or model ones. I'd make your own out of craft paint and some flow aid and water. And then finally, you can use some gloss on it as well. So I put together a what was it? A Tory gate for Tests of Honor, and I quite liked in all the reference pictures I had how they were quite nice and shiny. So once I painted it red, I just went over with a quick bit of gloss varnish and brought out some shine into it. So these are also viable to use as a use at the end if you want anything to have a glossy look. Okay, so that's the paints that we will use on the MDF. So I'll clear this up and I'll see you in the next bit. Okay, so lastly, we're going to take a look at some of the tools that you're going to need to use for MDF kits. First of all, we'll just start off. A file is a really handy thing to have. Now, a lot of MDF kits, or well, all MDF kits, are all the peg and slot system. So essentially, you'll find some of those pegs that should fit quite snugly into the holes don't, basically. So if you have a little emery board file, or even just a plain old bit of sandpaper, that will help just take it back a little bit so that it fits snugly into the hole. So sandpaper and a file / emery board, or whichever you've got to hand, really handy to have. Next up, we've got the obvious hobby knife. Advisory that it's new, or it's at least very sharp. This will basically enable us to take the pieces out of the sprues, and they're always connected by small little tags. Get that on screen for you. So we'll see on this one, I think there's 4 tags, and then you can just put it in there, slide it in between the two, just cut through that tag. Like I say, make sure it's nice and sharp so that it goes through cleanly. And then once you've got all the tags done, I've already done that one, the piece will pop out nicely. Okay, so make sure you have a nice sharp craft blade, small or large, but just make sure it's sharp. Okay, and then lastly, I left this last because it's very unlikely you'll need this, but I have once or twice had to use one, is a little junior hacksaw. Now basically you'll find sometimes, I had a previous kit and there was a sort of a platform for the roof, and it was about 3 mil too big, so that was just a case of going in there, clamping it down to a table, taking the hacksaw and taking those few mil off. Now you can do the same thing with a chunky knife, a chunky hobby knife. If you do it with a hobby knife, do it in a few passes, so score it once, then press a bit harder, go through it again, and so on until the piece finally comes off. I just found that a good sharp junior hacksaw did the job quite well. Okay, so those are the tools that you're going to need or that you may need when building your MDF kit, and that about sums everything up really. So I'll set up for the outro and I'll see you guys in a minute.
And there you go guys, as working with MDF kits. I hope you found this video helpful. If you'd like to add anything to it, then please feel free to put anything in the comments below, anything you'd like to add from your experience. And yeah, that's it for this week. So, usuals for the video. Like it if you liked it, share everything anyone else would like to see it, and don't forget to subscribe for the next episode. Have fun guys.